now the true Cuomo's coming out, and it's ugly, right? And it's disgusting. And now the anti-Muslim attacks, right? He just did one where he was like, with Sid Rosenberg, and it was straight disgusting and Islamophobia.
What we're seeing now is the true Cuomo, the full picture of Cuomo. And I agree with you that 9/11 comment that he was laughing about, where, they were saying that Mamdani will be cheering on 9/11. It was just disgusting. It wasn't just ugly. It was hateful. It was
super hateful.
It was hateful demagoguery and dangerous. Because people already don't like Muslims. They don't like brown people. And when you say that kind of thing, it just makes it okay for people who are already pissed off to do horrible things. I'm just like,
it's disgusting. It's disgusting. What up, everyone? It's Lev Black of the Uptown Collective, and I'm here with my brother Octavio Blanco for another Uptown Voices, aka Black and Blanco. No guests, just here, me and my brother. But before we go any further, I have to implore you to make sure you subscribe. It helps the numbers out, helps the look. It helps the look. It's a good look for us. We're now the podcast is now percolating. So keep showing that love and subscribe. So make sure you do that. Octavio, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm okay. Like I was saying to you, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, but I'm glad to be here. Things in this country are driving me crazy. Things on the block are driving me crazy. I woke up, I came out, did some exercise with my wife, and then came home, and I found that 2 of the cars that were right in front of our apartment building got broken into. Like, they smashed the windows and went in and grabbed stuff. So, that's not good. That's not good when you see that happen. It got me feeling a kind of way. So I know you drive, so, be careful, where you park, I guess. New York City, so you got to park everywhere. But, everything being everything, it's all good though. Like, I got my health, I got my family.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day. It's got that fall crisp weather. So I'm good. What about you? How are you doing? I mean, you seem.
Well, I was in a good mood until you messed up my mood. No, I'm just playing. But it's so funny that because I feel like most times I'm pretty like upbeat. But when you talking about the 2 cars getting smashed, that's down the block from me, right? And I've had my car stolen. I've gotten my mirrors stolen. I got my license by your block, because your block, we're not gonna specify, you know what I mean? But your block is a weird block because it's one of those back blocks.
Yeah,
right.
It's quiet.
It's quiet, but it's dangerous. Especially, it's so funny because one side of your block, it's a okay place to park, and the other place isn't. And that little L you have there is just, And I try not to park there, and that's the thing. I drive, and I drive every day. So most of my life is parking and driving, you know what I mean? So when you tell me that, like, like I have, like, it's funny, like you see on people on social have like a skincare routine, right? I got an anti-theft routine, right? You know what I mean? I got the old school club on my like,
good.
You know what I mean? So I got the club, and then I got the 2 little sleeves for the side view mirrors, like, and I got to put locks on it. It's a lot of stuff, man. Like, so I have a Honda CR-V, right? 2023. That is one of the most popular stolen cars, in America right now. And someone found it out online how to do it, and it's just really easy to steal. You know what I mean? So I got mine stealing for 9 days, and when they found it in the Bronx, and a lot with like 9 other CR-Vs. You know what I mean? So luckily I got it back. So that kind of pisses me off, man. But I want to say I am right now. Like, I came up with a term this morning, so I'm gonna share with you in the world. Like, I feel like I have a front row seat to this upcoming Mamdani tsunami. You know what I mean? Like, the Mamdani tsunami is coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That tsunami is gonna clear out the Cuomos, the Adams. Like, now they're stepbrothers. You see them together now. They were 7 months ago. They were talking. He's a snake. He's a rat.
He's a snake. He's a rat. And
now we're brothers.
Like, we're courtside at the freaking Knicks game
after the debate, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was such like, it's just such nonsense.
It reminded me of like what you were talking about Obama, and I think it was in our last episode. You were saying, you were pissed at how, like, after everything, they were so, lovey-dovey with George Bush, who they thought was, and the whole thing is like, politicians, like, they say all kinds of to get elected, and then once they're elected, everything, or once their one drops out, then they're best friends again. I found that to be so disingenuous. The fact that Adams backed Cuomo, I thought was like great, because if you're for Adams, like, you got a screw loose, and if you're for Cuomo, you're also, you deserve to be with each other. So I don't think that endorsement helped a lot.
It doesn't, but what's weird about it, right? It's like, I don't know, the movie Step Brothers. That's what it made me think of. The movie with Will Ferrell.
I love that movie.
Step Brothers. That's
I
the
watch
two
it
Step Brothers, right?
I watch it every time.
Like, remember the point where they go, "Are we best friends now?" Like, that's what it feels like. You know what I mean? But what's weird though, like, and I'll say this: one of the things that I'm very like disgusted by Cuomo. Like, it's so funny, right? And I'm gonna put my big daughter, my oldest daughter, like, on blast, because she's not gonna want me to say this. But during the pandemic, she used to refer to Cuomo as a homie, right? Because Cuomo during the pandemic was like that reassuring voice, right?
Yeah.
When Trump was saying wow, but it turned out that he wasn't that person. He was put on a like what we thought we saw wasn't it, and now the true Cuomo's coming out, and it's ugly, right? And it's disgusting, and now the anti-Muslim attacks, right? He just did one where he was like, with Sid Rosenberg, and it was straight disgusting. And Islamophobia, and again, you got a million New Yorkers that are Muslim, dumbass. Like, it to me, it's like how depraved, again, and also that the ruling classes also feel that they could dictate to us who's gonna rule us. Like, nah, hold on, nah, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, and another thing is that it just goes to show how out of touch Cuomo is with the city of New York, right? So Cuomo, he was the governor. I mean, he got booted out of there, right? But he was the governor. So what we saw from Cuomo in New York was curated for us in New York City, right? But what Cuomo delivered probably to the people upstate, the more conservative counties upstate, I bet you was very different from what we were hearing from Cuomo here in New York City. And the fact that, like, our media is so, like, sectionalized. So, the New York City media isn't really listening to what Cuomo says up in, like, Syracuse or whatever. So, like, I just think it just came out, right? It just comes out because Cuomo isn't what he says he is. What we're seeing now is the true Cuomo, the full picture of Cuomo. And I agree with you that 9/11 comment that he was laughing about, where they were saying that Mamdani will be cheering on 9/11. It was just disgusting. It wasn't just ugly. It was hateful. It was
super hateful.
It was hateful demagoguery and dangerous.
Zoran put like a 6-minute clip about it. It was just him speaking to the camera, and it was really a beautiful statement, saying that, like, talk about the indignities that the Muslim community has to suffer here, especially after 9/11 and the nonsense they have to go through every day, and the insults, the really, the truly heinous nonsense, the passive aggressive stuff that Muslims in the city have to do in this country. And he talked about, like, coming out of the shadows and being themselves and being and again, that's beautiful. I think that's one of the again, like, at a lot of these Zoran rallies, it's beautiful to see, like, working class New York, working class Muslim, working class, people of color coming out supporting this man. So that's one of the things that I'm hopeful for. Like, I feel like I'm all in for Zoran. You know what I mean? And I've luckily I've been able to, like, find my way into certain things. It's been pretty cool. During the second debate, I actually got to ride on the bus with Zoran. You know what I mean? And that was an interesting experience. I'm not really know how much I could share, but I'm gonna say this, that we got on a regular bus in Queens, right? I don't know Queens that much. I gotta really be down for Zoran if I'm going to Queens, right? You know what I mean? It's not a Mets game or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm from Uptown. I don't go outside but so I went and we got on the bus with him in Queens Plaza South. That's where we met, somewhere around there, 28th Street, I think. And then we took the bus to the debate, which is really
28th
cool.
Street,
So
28th Avenue, 28th Road.
yeah,
You
28th
never-
Road, 28th Lane, like what? What?
It's
You know what I mean?
Queens,
Like
and they're all
Queens is
intersecting.
super strange. Yeah, I love the food in Queens, but it's just like weird, like trying to understand the topography. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, my wife's from Queens, so I can't really like,
the whole world's from
talk-
Queens. Queens is awesome. It's just I just feel when I drive there, it's confusing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah, you're for sure. It is, even for people from Queens, I think.
yeah, I would. It have to be. You know what I mean? Like you had like which one? 29th Street or is it Road or Avenue? You know what I mean? But
so anyway, you were saying you met him and you got on the bus.
So we got in the bus with him, right? And
it was a regular bus. It just like
regular bus. It was a regular bus.
Were there other people on there that were like,
there were other people. They were like, what is happening? And then there was like, what was kind of whack. It was one lady kind of like just hating, you know what I mean? She was Latina, and then she was just like, as soon as came in, she started talking like really ugly, stuff, and really divisive nonsense. But it's part of the cult, you know what I mean? And so. No one really took it serious, but it's ugly. And it was like again, one thing I keep going back to is for people of color to hate on other people of color, right? For people of color to say things about another group that were once said about you or still said about you and are going to be said about you is so ugly. Like the need to like not show solidarity among like people, minorities is crazy to me. I can't understand it. And the lady was saying like, God bless Trump, all types of nonsense, trying to rain on other people being like just happy with their candidate. Because that's what I feel like. I feel like that is the one glimmer, you know what I mean, in politics is this movement that's being created, and again is about him, but it's also about us, right? That we do have power, and if New York can create an alternative, if New York New York is New York. New York is, to my opinion, the greatest city ever. You know what I mean? But if we could change the trajectory of this city and change what it means, because we can, right? There's a lot of working people in this city that can't afford to live in this city and they love this city. So we could change the trajectory. It's like we need to become the new rulers of the city. You know what I mean? We need to change that old guard, and put a new guard in, and it needs to be us. So I'm excited.
Yo, you know what you're saying is so important. I think that I was thinking about this just before we got on. Regular New Yorkers have a lot of power. We have a lot of political power and we have a lot of economic power. We can use that if it can get channeled in the right direction. It's not just the billionaire class. The billionaire class, though, they have a lot of money and they have a lot of power and they're exerting it. Bill Ackman is spending millions and millions of dollars to try to get, people out of the race or to combat Mamdani. And I don't think that it's actually working. Mamdani said it. He said, he's spending more to keep me out of the race than I would ever tax him, which is so telling. Like Mamdani, yeah, he's going to tax the billionaire class, but there's more to it than that. The billionaire class doesn't want the working class to feel their power. It doesn't want the people to understand their strength and doesn't want the people to know that if organized, they can, make a real change. They can get involved. So, this is like a real interesting time. I pray that Mamdani does what he's saying he's going to do, or at least gives it a good try. I hope that he doesn't fall, to the Obama example, which was say a lot and then when the rubber hits the road, you don't fight or you get outflanked because you don't stick to your convictions, which is, I think, what happened to Obama. I think Obama thought Obama's a smart guy, right? He's smart, but I think he thought he was smarter than a lot of people. And I think he got, painted into a corner and outflanked by people who stick to their convictions. And I think Obama was, like you say, too nice and the time for being nice is over. But I don't know what that means. Like, what does it mean that the time for being nice is over? Like, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's let the decapitations begin. Right, like within, right. We need to consolidate. Like this. What Mamdani shows is that we don't have to listen to the Democratic Party elite. right? Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries endorsed him literally yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, hold on. We're kind of right now because today is what?
Today,
October 25th.
25th, and it is,
And that is the beginning of early voting.
Early voting. I'm gonna go vote.
Yeah. So we messing up. It's early voting time. I don't like to vote until the day of. That's just me because I like to vote with like the people. You know what I mean? I like to be in there and catch the vibe. You know what I mean? Like, my voting place is very, very Dominican, right? So it's like it's fun. You know, there's always like the little scene outside where the different candidates, maybe not this election, but the candidates usually compete for each other and they play merengue and stuff. So it's fun and I enjoy that.
That's
but
cool.
Open voting early voting has begun. Make sure you get out there. And again, you're right. Like the elite is not about losing an election; it's about losing power, and they're so definitely afraid of it, right? Because once we do the change, right, from they're running things to the people, right? Like again, and it's funny. People like talk like it's so much hate that you get. Communists, socialists. People are so easily triggered by words, right? And but they don't look at like. Well, what things are happening? Like, so for example, I want to go back to the people power thing. I don't know, like, ICE was in the city this week. So this past Tuesday, ICE was down in Canal Street, right?
Well, they're in the city. I just want to say this: they're in the city every day in our communities. Every day in our communities. It just happened that they went to Canal Street and did something very, very public, and the people
but it was
there.
Right.
It was fantastic. I'm not taking it away. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, but it's also like, to your point, it's also a staged operation, right? They did big. It was big optics. They had their little like urban tanks, for lack of a better term, right? And they had notified, like, I think Newsmax that they were going to do it, so people were there already to kind of stage this thing, right? And what's interesting, I don't know if you saw this, but according to what I've seen on social media, there was an influencer who I think was Latina. She might have been Filipina, but I think she was Latina. And she came, I guess she's apparently not from New York, and she was down in Canal. And she was seeing how many people were selling counterfeit things, and she kept saying, they're Africans, I think they're from Senegal. And then within a day or two, the raids happened. So so there are thoughts that this might have triggered it, which is crazy that some right-wing social media influencer is going to trigger something, but that's the world we live in now, right? But what's interesting is...
It's so true, because I mean, I don't want to take you away from your discussion, but like, we live in that world where, like, if you're a Canadian state and you make an ad showing how tariffs are going to be hurtful, that the president says, okay, well, I'm done discussing tariffs with the whole country. And it's like, it's not like the whole country made that ad. It was like Ontario or something, Anyway.
Yeah, but not only that, he announces it on social, on live social. You know what I mean? Not Truth Social, live social.
Yeah, live social.
Yeah. I got that from the I Had It podcast. Shout out to them; they're amazing. But back to my point, right? Like that. I forgot what my point was actually. What was I saying?
Well, you were talking about how there was very public, and it was on Canal Street, and then the people power.
The people power, right? So what's interesting about that? There was a homegirl coming from work. She was dressed business casual with flats and a polka dot dress.
I love her.
And she was throwing the middle finger to the little tank, and she's pushing people around, right? And that's what's needed, right? And another thing that I find interesting, like at almost every ICE thing I've seen, there's always a few people of color, like men, either black or brown men or Dominican, and they're usually jacked up and they're just being jerks. And then there's a bunch of like out of shape, like just rednecks, like and it just feels like it's like non-soldiers cosplaying. Like they just took like the worst of the worst, and then they're putting them in our streets, right? Like I've seen so many scenes across the country where like they are so unprofessional, so untrained, and that these tactics they're using are gonna backfire. Right, that you're gonna grab the wrong person at the wrong time, and this could end up ensuing into harm. But I think that's what they want, right?
Absolutely, that's what they want.
They want a reaction, so they could.
We need to be careful. We need to be very careful in how we react. I am all for the way that New Yorkers reacted to ICE on Canal Street, but it was very much on the edge, right? It was on the edge of what you should be doing, because you don't want to be violent towards ICE. You don't want to because anything that can happen can push it to the point where the president then decides to invoke martial law, which is what he wants.
But the thing is, that's the beauty of this, right? The beauty of this is that you really can't beat people power, right? Because we could all have our phones, we could all record what's happening, so we could always have a counterbalance to whatever they say. So what I'm saying is, like, you're right, to the edge, but to the edge we must go. Right, we have to go to that edge. You know what I mean? Like, let's be honest. Like, you know, they came out in force, and then it was just regular people. It was kids. It was everybody that said, "Nah, you're not doing this here," and they look shook. They look shook. And again, this is what we must do right now. I saw a story where it was Hexef talking about that by spring of next year they're gonna have like special National Guard troops ready to quell urban disturbances. They're ready to go. That seems like, oh, so you're ready for the election. Like, what I'm saying is that it's now or never. Like, every day it's coalescing, it's hardening, it's coalescing more. The dictatorship is taking, we're the beginning of this dictatorship. And it's taking form, and it's taking shape, and it's calcifying. And every day, like, you know, with the whole Doge thing at the beginning thing where they went into every government, that was about taking data and putting it in there, and taking that data and making it theirs, using that data for whatever they want. They have all our data, right? We're like, this is where it must be. Like, again, no violence, because violence is not going to help, right? Like, Chris Hedges, who I love Chris Hedges. He always says, like, violence is not going to help you in a lot of these situations, right? Because you don't have the violence to meet the masters of violence. They have too many tools. I saw a story about where ISIS just spent all their money on weapons. They got all types of new weaponry. You're not beating the government that way, and we don't need to get people killed in the streets. So, but we could be there and show solidarity when we see things we don't like. We could protest. We could record. We could stand up for others. You know what I mean? And I want to say another thing. I don't like the term ally. I don't want allies. I want accomplices. You know what I'm saying? Because we're all in this together. You know what I mean? So when they get me today, they're going to get you tomorrow. So stop playing like they're not allies. We're all in this together. We need to fight for each other.
Communist comrades?
No, I don't know. I didn't say that. No, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, comrades too, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but the point is, we need to show solidarity with one another, whatever way you want to call it.
I want to say this, you know, I went to the protest the day after the ICE raids that was down in Foley Square, and I took some video there. One video that I didn't take, which was, there was a Trump supporter there, one sole Trump supporter there, who was screaming, yelling at the top of his lungs how we were terrorists, how we were traitors. I mean, yelling, and like, he was a New Yorker through and through. Like, he knew, just like, he was loud, boisterous, unabashed, and of course all the cameras were on him, right? Because he was doing that, and it was awful. He was so annoying, and so, like, he was inciting he wanted to incite people, and I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't do anything. But one of the great things about the way the protesters and the protests are really well organized events, to be frank, because they had a whole group of people that were like diffusers waiting for somebody like this to come, and they just basically like stood in front of him and started to sing like all these hymns, like, we shall overcome, this land is your land, this land is my land, and basically just ultimately drowned him out with all these like beautiful songs. And they were like, this guy was like this real like rough looking dude, you know, like looked like, I don't want to like stereotype, but he looked like he was like from a construction site, you know, like very, you know, big guy or whatever, jacked up kind of dude. And all the like diffusers were all these like Grand Tifas, you know, like the Grand Tifas.
Grand Tifa, that's hilarious.
All these like gray haired grandmas and grandpas were like just like holding hands and singing and just like shutting him down. And I thought that was beautiful. But the people that spoke at the protest were really interesting, and the mood there was definitely one of, you know, we can't let this happen. We've got to fight. And I'm for that. You know, I got to say, you know, one of the difficult things that I've found doing this podcast is finding my voice, my own like actual voice,
Mhm.
because we've said a lot about, I'm a trained journalist, right? So
Right.
I've had my voice kind of like uh trained out of me, right? Like, so
Right.
it's
I can see
it's
that. That
it's
makes sense.
it's hard for me to like actually connect to like my feelings and my voice, which
Mm.
sometimes makes it, sometimes it's like what makes this podcast interesting, because I bring, that sensibility, that way of
Right.
being,
I
and
agree.
I think that's okay. But I really like love the fact that you have your voice and you're so, connected to it, and that you're so
Mhm.
unabashed. And so I wanted to ask you about that, about your voice, and maybe like to help me and some other people too who may be struggling with how to like find their voice. You've mentioned that your reading has really helped you to sort of like hone your message. You've mentioned that when you were a teen you were like turned on to the writings of Malcolm X, and how that helped to tone your message. But now you're, a grown up, right? You have a
Mhm.
family and you live in a society, you live in a neighborhood. And I want to understand a little bit about, where do you go, or how do you stay connected to those true feelings, and to that voice of yours, which you like utilize so effectively?
Oh well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I've always been this person. You know what I mean? Since I was a kid, like again, I was all once Malcolm comes into the picture, right? Like I was always a smart kid. You know what I mean? I was but growing like when I was a kid, like my library card was my passport. Right?
Mm.
I was a poor kid in Washington Heights. We were poor, but working poor. So I didn't have a lot of things, but we always ate. We didn't, miss a
Right.
meal or nothing. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of the luxuries of life, we didn't have. And I was very smart. You know what I mean? So when I was born here at 3 months, and then my mom sent me to DR, and I came back like a 4.5. I didn't know English. You know what I mean? But but I was so young that I learned English really fast. And like from third grade on, I was always like in the accelerated classes. But
Mm.
I was just reading, I was going through the school system, you know what I mean? And whatever that was. But I had a teacher in third grade. Her name is Mrs. Altman. And Mrs.
Mm.
Altman was kind of like a former hippie. And
Mhm.
she was really big into Native American. So I got really big into Native American culture and reading about all the tribes. And my favorite tribe was the Apache tribe, right? And then from that I got into like martial arts because of the Sunday movie, the Saturday, films with the martial arts, films from China. I really got into that. And then from that, I went into reading about like Japanese feudal society and ninjas and samurais. I really got into that. So I knew all the different, and so I've always been a person that liked to learn, just to learn, to grow. And then, but Malcolm changed the trajectory, of the way I looked at the world. So since like a teenager, in high school is when I've been looking at the world a certain way. You know what I mean? And always contrarian. I think I was very lucky in the sense that my mom was a rural Dominican woman, right? Meaning that she's from a little town called Esperanza, which means hope.
Uh-huh.
Um, and she didn't really go to church a lot. So, she was I call her Dique Católica, you know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
because she didn't go to church often, but she always had like an altar. We always had an altar in my house where the
Mm.
different saints and candles, and she lights them up, and she would say her devotions every day. When she woke up, she was a very spiritual person, but in a very rural Dominican / African kind of way,
Huh. Uh-huh.
with Catholicism as the kind of like the over like what you think it is. I think the term is syncretism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you don't. It's been so long, you don't see it as syncretism. You just see it as Catholicism, but it's not, right? I never went to church, so I was lucky that I was not a person that was forced into church. You know what I mean? And I remember even, when she tried to get me into St. Elizabeth, St. E's on 186. I mean, yeah, 180, 186.
Huh.
186, 187th, and Wadsworth. They were like, oh, we don't have no more spots, but if you give us some money. So I didn't go to Catholic school. I went to 189, 143. I went to the hood schools. You know what I mean? But I was always a smart kid. but again, Catholicism never felt right. Even when I try to do my communion, you got to do your communion classes, and they were like the Holy Trinity, right? It was the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. There's like no woman involved in that Holy Trinity. It was just it never felt right. It never felt right in my soul. So I never was born. So I think that one of the reasons that I'm able to think freely is because I'm not religious. You know, I'm deeply spiritual. I pray often. I talk to my ancestors. I talk to my dad who passed 2 years ago. I talk to my grandmother who passed 20 some odd years ago. You know, I talk to my people, and I talk to God in in my own way. But I'm not religious. You know, so I think not being religious has helped to free my mind, because a lot of times religion gives you constructs that you have to believe in. You know what I mean? And this is what it is, and this is what it is. And a lot of those constructs weren't created for your liberation. Right. So it's like, so that's one of the reasons I think my voice is what it is, and so since 13, 14 years old, I've been feeding, like you look at the books, you know what I mean? Malcolm was the gateway, is my gateway to blackness and to being indigenous, being, I'm all those things, right? You know, so again, I just think that's part of it. I do a lot of reading. Democracy Now! I watch Democracy Now! Or try to watch Democracy Now! Every day from Monday to Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern. Amy Goodman is amazing. She's been doing it forever. That's the best news program. And I think if you want to get an understanding of what's happening in the world, I think you could do no better than every hour Democracy Now! At least. At least if that's the least you do, that's what you should do. But yeah, that's where it comes from, man.
And you're connected. You stay connected to that sort of, because we're easily distracted nowadays. I mean, it's easy for us to get distracted and to forget those things, or to not. Yeah, I guess forget is the right word, but like to be connected to that. Do you have like you said you have like a parking, like what did you call it, like a puck, when you park and you put the things on the mirrors,
the auto theft routine, that I have.
Do you have like
anti-theft?
You have an anti-theft routine? Do you have like a mental presence routine that keeps you like kind of like connected to that, and staying true to those ideals, like, because it can be hard, I think, to stay sort of like connected to those ideals when we're confronted with the realities of life, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think in certain ways, like, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was talking about in the 90s, right, have all come to pass. I feel like a lot of stuff I'm being validated. There's a lot of confirmation happening now. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, in the 90s when no one was talking about Israel and Palestine, right? Like, I remember reading about that, and having thoughts, thinking about it, really thinking about what that part of the world means to the rest of society and what was being done. So I think I've been ahead of the curve, and now I'm seeing, the veil being lifted, and everything I was thinking for the last 30 years is now coming into fruition, right? We're living through collapse. We're living through what the culmination of these policies, right? Like, this is the path that America's been going down for a long time, and now we see it, right? We wanted to play dumb, we wanted to divest from people. We didn't want to spend money on people. We just wanted money for the billionaires, and our cities are what our cities are, because it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. We have not invested in the people of this country. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at. So for me, a lot of what I see now just confirms it. You know what I mean? It's so funny, right? So I get a lot of hate because it's like, oh, you only go with Trump, No, you just don't read my shit. You know what I mean? You don't read me. Because I remember it was January of last year, right? When Biden was still in office, right? And I remember I wrote in my newsletter, I sent a paragraph where I was just despondent. I was like, I hated Biden. I was like, this. I called him El Muerto. Like, I feel like this guy is leading us to this thing, and no one's seeing it. And I was so mad, to the point where, like, people, my brother Mike Fiddleson from the United Palace, he sent me a text. Yo, you okay? You all right? John Oldman, my other friend, was like, yo, lad, you okay? Because they were like, what are you doing? Again, I feel I've been saying it. Like, I've been saying these things. So I think sometimes seeing confirmation of the things you've been saying for the last 30 years makes you even more, like, I feel like I want to be more let black every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wake up let black and I go to sleep let black. And my wife is like, again, sometimes we had a fight today because she gets too much let black in her life and she gets mad. You know what I mean? But this is who I am. You know what I mean? I drive my kids crazy talking shit all day. I like to talk shit because I feel like I have a unique view towards these things because I've been since I'm 13 years old. I've not been indoctrinated in a lot of these systems. Starting with religion or starting in the myths of America. Because Malcolm said, "Yo, that's nonsense. What you've been taught up to this point is not true, right?"
And
But
so,
I still think, what's funny is like I think the beauty of America is its ugliness, right?
yeah,
That after all the twin genocides is a term that I think I came up with. I don't know, is the twin genocides of the Native American and the African, that we could still have a country where a majority voted someone named Barack Hussein Obama. Right,
right.
that we had a country, and taken away from my feelings now about Barack, but the fact that the United States twice voted, the majority of the people in this country says that there is people power, right? He took that people power and just used it for himself, and then didn't really use it to change the system, right? But it shows you that it's possible, and
Okay,
even Trump shows you what's possible. Trump is
yeah,
remaking the world in his image.
yeah,
He's doing
yeah,
whatever the he wants. Like,
yeah.
there's no limits, and there's lawsuits, but he's still doing what he wants. So that means that when we get in power, we could do what we want too.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And let me ask you another thing about the about Lead Black and how you became who you are and how you stay connected. I mean, I understand hip hop had a big influence in your life too, right? Like, I mean,
For
we
sure.
both, I mean, mine too, but I didn't live in New York City next to the Bronx where hip hop was born like you were. So you must have been, and you're of our generation, and
Yeah.
you've grown up with hip hop, and you used to rhyme too, right? I mean, you probably still
Yeah,
do
yeah,
in
yeah.
your own
Still
time,
rhymes.
but
I'm nice with it. I'm nice. Yeah. No,
so
no,
tell me,
yeah,
how
no.
did hip hop, how does hip hop sort of influence that? Because I think there's like a little bit of um so like hip hop is complicated too, because hip hop isn't just one thing. There was like gangster rap, and there I've read lately about like how gangster rap sort of evolved, and how who was funding it and why, and that there's like I was a little bit concerned about that, but hip hop to me, is different than gangster rap, and gangster rap is different than hip hop. It's all part of the same kind of like culture, but there's different factions. But to you, how did hip hop impact you? And for you, like what is your view on hip hop?
Well, I mean, like, for me, I was born into a world where hip hop was at its infancy, right? So I was born into a New York City where hip hop was just at the very beginning of that culture. You know what I mean? And like, yes, the South Bronx is but in a lot of ways, Washington Heights is right there. Like, Washington Heights, South Bronx have always been connected, not just by bridges, but by culture and love and family. Right.
Hmm.
So if you look at Star Wars, the beginning of Star Wars, that the super seminal film about hip hop, they're shooting it right in front of Dykeman Projects, the very beginning. Right. So
Ah,
we have
uh-huh.
always, these neighborhoods have always been connected. You know what I mean? So, but like, what I would look out my window on the second floor, growing up on the 190s in Wadsworth, I would look outside in the basement. The kids were breakdancing. You know what I mean? They would have the cardboard on the floor. So I saw, hip hop from the very beginning. You know what I mean? And I remember, like, I was always first of all, I grew up in a household of music lovers. Right. So my dad, being a poor Dominican dude from DR that worked a factory job, he always saved his money. It was like like I forgot the term. He was an audiophile. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter, like, he always had like the top notch stereo equipment. I don't know how he did research. You know what I mean? He didn't write, he didn't read in English. He spoke a little bit of English, mostly when he was, drunk or whatever, cursing. But he was somehow knew what was the best equipment, and he would have the best equipment. And then luckily what happened was I would get the hand-me-downs. Right. So,
Uh,
so my dad buys a boom box. Right. When he got the new boombox, I would get the old boombox. So when in my room, I had a boombox on the bed. You know what I mean? And the thing is that people don't realize that now you could turn on the radio, Hot 97, you could put Power 105 and you listen to hip hop whenever you want. But that wasn't the case. That came about in 92. Right. So when you didn't get hip hop on the radio except for certain times. So back then, before Kiss was a sports station, you know what I'm saying? 98.7 Kiss used to be, black music, you know what I mean? Black radio. And on Fridays or whatever, you would have DJ Red Alert playing hip hop and Chuck Chill Out playing, on BLS, you know what I mean? And that's when you would put your tape and record and listen to it. But again, it was the records. It was a creative force, right? And it's interesting that in that same time the hip hop is being born. Salsa's hip hop's older brother, right? Born in the streets of New York City, right? These cultures were coming out of New York City, you know what I mean? So it's this amazing creativity. These people saying like, it was the depths. For the 70s were really low places, but people found a way of expressing themselves to say, hey, I matter, right? And that's what hip hop was. It was saying, hey, I matter. Y'all may not care, but we don't care about y'all either. And we're going to do our own thing here in our hoods, right? And that's what hip-hop was. It was a music that at first, a lot of those artists, they were more like party artists. They didn't want to record songs. That wasn't their thing. They wanted to rock the jam, and it was those entrepreneurs who said like, yo, this is... a lot of them thought it was gimmicks, right? Like let's take this. So like Sugar Hill, the first, not the Sugar Hill Gang, the song that they made, right? They got rappers for that. Like they weren't really rappers. They just put them on the record because they saw the interest. But what was interesting, like that gangster stuff really was in response to how woke hip hop became, right? So you had in the late 80s, you had Big Daddy Kane, right? And Big Daddy Kane was so you may not know this, right? But there was always been like a it's called the 5% Nation, right? The 5% Nation is kind of an offshoot of the Nation of Islam, right? So you had a person called Clarence 13X who was part of I think Mosque Number 7 in Harlem. He kind of left it and started an offshoot. Right.
Okay.
And it became the 5% Nation. Right.
Yep.
The 5% Nation was interesting is that like I had a cousin who was a 5%er and they had their own language, their own ways of speaking, and it became very influential in early hip hop. You know what I mean? And it also became very influential in the jails. And what was interesting about that, so you had Kane who used 5% terminology. Rakim, his full name is Rakim Allah, right? He was a 5%, he used 5%. Even someone like KRS-One who wasn't a 5%, but his name means knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone. Right, so there was a consciousness to the music. Right, one of my favorite groups back then there was a group called X Clan, and there was a guy named Brother J, and Brother J was like African, very African. Come and step a brother, step and see what's happening. Like he was dropping like real like pro-black, pro-African, pro-indigenous, like, and that's what scared them. Right, so what they said is, hey, this is scaring us, but we still need to.
Who was getting scared?
The record execs, the powers that be, right?
Okay.
So they didn't like the direction that it was taking, but they knew that hip hop was an unstoppable force, right? So what they did is they and you don't know that at the time.
Right, no,
right? You don't know. You just groove into this music, but you see that the music changed. The music went from Public Enemy, right, to other things, to NWA, right? Why is that? Is that a natural switch, right? No, is that the music business decided to fund something else, right? Instead of funding something that helps the people making the music, let's fund something that helps us, that further divides us, right? Like I heard a term, I don't remember who said it, like dancing to our own destruction, right? And that's what it did. Like I love hip hop, and I'm not hating on NWA, but the music in certain ways became a liability to us, in certain ways, right? It was detrimental. And it's interesting that the hip hop that got exported around the world is not the woke, progressive, resistance rap. It's more the nonsense, every woman's a hoe, materialism, you know what I mean? Just every man for himself, and that's what, you have someone like Diddy who's the epitome of that, right? So what I'm saying is like, I think that the music and the art form was co-opted, you know what I mean? But still, it's still there. It's 50 years later, right? And 52 years later now, I think, 53 years later, even maybe. But it's there, and it's still a viable music that's still great, and that's what I like. Like I don't really listen to like regular radio, I got satellite radio, so I like, you listen to hip hop. There's a lot of great new hip hop being made. There's a lot of dope artists being made, and I still think hip hop is a tool for liberation. You know what I mean? I think you can make music to move the masses in the right way. And I think it's all hands on deck. Right, so I might drop some new shit. You never know, Octavio. I might have some songs next year. You know what I mean? I'm trying to do everything next year.
Let's get the street team together.
The street team. You know what I'm saying? But no, but seriously, like I don't like. You look at someone like Nas, for example. I remember when first, like before that album came out. Nas was already like that guy, like everyone's talking about. Like the first time I heard Nas, there was a song. He was with Main Source. Right? And there was a line. So he was just an appearance on that song. Right? And he said, when I was 12, I went to hell for snuffing Jesus. And I was like, oh my God. It was like so amazing, so sacrilegious at the same time. It was just saying everything. Like, and it struck me. And I was like, oh, this guy's the greatest. You know what I mean? So before the album came out, there was like an album in the streets percolating, right? And Nas is just that person. To me, Nas in a certain, so Rakim was the older generation. Rakim, Kane, G-Rap, KRS-One, they were that older generation. Here comes Nas. And his name is Nasir, like Rakim. So it was like, to me, it was like a second coming. And I used to love Nas. I still love Nas. But Nas, to this day, is still dropping heat. He dropped like 3 or 4 albums like in the last 2 years. He's doing amazing stuff. So it goes to show you that age is not a thing, right? Like, rockers could rock forever, right? If Bob Marley were alive today, Bob Marley would be making the greatest music alive, right?
Rolling Stones.
Exactly.
Look, Led, listen, I know that you got something coming up. So we're hitting up against your heart out right now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a great conversation. Obviously, we have a lot more to talk about. There's a lot more going on in the world, but I'm just so glad that we got to learn a little bit more about you and
Thanks, brother.
what shaped you. Because I really feel like this is just the beginning for both of us, but also this is kind of just the beginning for you. I love the fact that you're getting so involved with Zoran Mamdani. I love the fact that we're able to elevate your voice in particular. I think it's important voice, and I'm just looking forward to doing more of that. I think we're gonna need to end it here because time is tight this week for Black and Blanco because you got things to do. But I'm glad that we got to sneak this one in. Do you have any last words? Any last words before? Oh, by the way, I'll remind viewers, please, subscribe. Don't miss any episodes. Subscribe. Yeah, subscribe. We're gonna probably be doing cool stuff like doing live episodes where we're just gonna be, talking on it'll be on YouTube most likely, and you'll be able to ask us questions too because that's how YouTube works on the live episodes. You're subscribed, we'll have the little chat there, and you can ask us anything as we do our thing. So keep an eye out for that, but definitely subscribe so you won't miss it when that happens.
For real.
All right. What about so any last words?
So just again, the Mamdani tsunami is on its way, and we're gonna clear house, and we're gonna create a new paradigm in New York City, and we're gonna from New York to the world, and we can, and we will, and we have to. So spread love is the Uptown way.
Yes, sir.